Contributors, well, I asked him for an introduction. He sent me one, but we'll ignore that. I'm not, my entire Fanac career, I've done one thing. That's stolen from others, borrowed, mutated. And to me, the highlight of last year's, the Corflu III's living fanzine, was one contributor, and I'm glad he's back. Gary Hubbard.
Yay. A little while back, Dan Steffen asked me to write something for his fanzine, Boone Park. So I did. And since at that time I had been just recently married, and since the subject was fascinating to me, I wrote about that. And if any of you out here remember that story, you'll recall that in it, I fell down a flight of stairs, bumped my head, and when I woke up, I was married. But there's more to it than that. Excuse me. There's more to it than that. There were a lot of amusing things that happened to me on the way to the altar. At least I hope they're amusing. And I'd like to share a few of them with you right now. Okay. Anyway, Bess and I were living together for a while before we decided to get married. I'm not exactly sure whose idea it was, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So, as the dominant male, I did the proposing, you know. This was my prerogative. And then I asked her, Bess, truly beloved, you'd make me the happiest man in the world if you would deign to be my wife. And she accepted, so I said, okay, you make the arrangements, I'm gonna go watch television. That's what I did. I mean, what could be involved in arranging a wedding, I thought, you know. What, huh? But apparently there was a lot more to it than I thought. Bess launched into this deal like she was planning a trip to the moon. She was up sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, arranging affairs, doing this and that, and everything like that. And we were like having a wedding on a budget. The budget being about $5. So this was a homemade affair. We arranged everything. Bess was making her own wedding dress. She was hand painting all the announcements. She used colored magic markers to make a rainbow, you know, as a logo, and underneath it she wrote, "Taking a chance on love." That was the theme. You see, it was a theme wedding. And going off and this and that and everything. We had to have somebody, you know, to actually perform the ceremony, and I had a little bit of a problem with that, because for me, religious ceremonies are flat out, you know. I mean, religious guys make me itch. That's all there is to it. And so I didn't want to have any pastor or minister or anybody like that. I suppose we could have been married by a justice of the peace, but I have even less respect for the state than I do for religion, so it was a real big problem. But it was solved. Bess has a friend named Melanie who is an ordained minister with the Universal Church of Whoopee. And that I could accept, okay, you know? That kind of thing I could deal with. And the Universal Church of Whoopee doesn't actually have a church. They just have a post office box out in San Francisco. Okay. So anyway, but we found a site. There was a park out near where we live where they do this sort of thing. So they had a little sort of amphitheater, you know, where the sort of marital gladiatorial matches take place, you know, where we have these things. Okay, so anyway, everything falls into place and we're running down to the final day. The night before the actual wedding, Bess got all of her principals together and picked up a blackboard and mapped everything out, okay, sort of like a matrimonial Vince Lombardi explaining to the team, you know, about the big play the next day, right, you know? She had all of the principles represented by, you know, either male or female symbols, the biological symbols, you know, little circles with the crosses or X's underneath them, you know, and everything like that. And she had all of the best ladies over here, the best men over here, and the bride and groom in the middle. And I was, of course, the groom. So I thought that my arrow should be a little longer than the others, so that it would, so you'd know, who was the groom, right? Okay, so anyway, Bess took care of that, and then, then we went on to the bachelor party. I had called all of my friends from Detroit, to come over for my bachelor party, and we had Bob, who showed up, brought his VCR and all his Mad Max movies, and then there was my friend Frank, and then another friend of mine, Steve. Now Steve is married. He's been married for a while, but his wife keeps him on a very short leash. So she let him come to this. She let him sort of out to let him run around to come to this event. Let him free for a little while, and it kind of affected his mind. He was up to boogie, to have a great old time. He was up to party, Anyway, but we were going to have this bachelor party, and Bess was going to have a bachelorette party, at another place. She was going to spend the night with her friends. I don't want to say girlfriends. I'll say girlfriends, right? And I was going to spend it with my boyfriends. Okay. So Frank took me aside, and whispered to me and said that he had arranged for a hooker to come to the bachelor party. A hooker. Now, why is it, whenever a guy is going to get married, that his friends think it's a cute idea to try to ruin his life the night before it even begins, okay? I ask you, a hooker, if I'd been single and went up to Frank and told him that I needed a hooker, he would have told me to get my own hooker, And now that I didn't need one, here there were, everybody was chipping in to get one. So anyway, well, the only problem was that the party was started and everything, but Bess was still in the house. And some of her friends were still in the house, too. So Frank came up to me and said, look, we got to get these women out of the house because, we don't want them to meet the hooker. Right, naturally. How in the world was I going to explain to my wife that this hooker was going to be giving executive service in her bedroom, Anyway. So I tried to goose her along a little bit, get Bess out of the house. I considered telling her about the hooker, but I thought, well, maybe not, wouldn't be a good idea. I could tell her after we were married, that would be maybe 10 years after we were married. But anyway, so Bess said she was hurrying along, but, well, this woman has never been anywhere on time in her whole entire life. And she still hasn't been. At that point, another friend of Bess's named Becky showed up. Now, Becky is married to a Scientologist. This guy's name is Mike, okay? And he's sort of like this, okay? Let me show you. That's Mike. So here I am, caught between a hooker and a Scientologist. Anyway, Bess eventually did leave, and the hooker never showed up. I don't know whether I'm relieved or disappointed about that, to tell you the truth. Anyway, the rest of my pals were busy watching a Mad Max film festival. And we were all slightly being cast into covert hostility by the Scientologist. So, the whole bachelor party idea went down the tubes pretty rapidly. It was a silly idea to begin with. Anyway, the next morning I woke up and looked out the window and asked myself, why was this day different from any other? It didn't seem to be, not really. But anyway, so I dressed and I washed and I got together and everything, and we went out to the park, And a lot of people who were there already. There was there was a diverse crowd. There was Bess's friends, and there were some of her parents' friends. There were some of our hippie friends, some of our ska friends, sort of semi-Fanish friends, and there were my hoodlum friends, you know, and the whole group was sort of mingling, but at the same time staying separate, you know, and sort of politely ignoring each other. I mean, everybody was in the same place, but they were distinct, you know, they were over there. You could tell by their clothes who was not with who and everything like that. And Frank was there wandering through the crowd taking pictures. And I walked up to him and I said, Frank, it's too early for blackmail pictures. You know, wait till later on this evening. So then I finally got a shot. I finally saw Bess. She was a vision. Sort of, there was this bower type deal, you know, flowers. And she was standing underneath it in her wonderful new wedding dress, her secret mysterious wedding dress, right, you know. And it was beautiful. The only thing is that it was much too sheer for an outdoor wedding. I mean, if it had been an indoor wedding, it would have been perfectly opaque, but it was a bright sunny day. She was standing in front of the sun, and it just was not working out too well, was it? All right. Okay. But, you know, I mean, I didn't mind, really, personally, but I was, you know, felt a little funny about giving the whole world a free show. Okay. Anyway. Now, I was dressed, too. I had on these white pants and a gold shirt and vest on and dark glasses. And well, that's great. No, I kind of look like a mafioso, really. I did, yes. But the wild thing about this was I had the wedding ring in a little box, and I put it down in my pants, okay? Now, it made kind of a lump, okay? It's a perfectly innocent lump. There was nothing wrong with it, except when you saw it sideways. So as we started down the aisle, here is Bess in her transparent wedding gown, and me with a bulge in my pocket. And you would have, if you had seen this, you would have said, now there's two people who are ready to be married. Okay, so we went up to the altar, and Melanie was out there, and she said, Dominy, 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 you're married now, and we had a good old time, and Bess had made up this very elaborate thing, a set of wedding vows, and she had made me memorize it, memorize it, memorize it. And it, let's see, do you remember how it went? No, come up here, Bess. Come. Okay, now how did that go?
Okay, it went, there were other little sections that we had to speak to, but the wedding vows themselves were, I mean to hold you in my heart. Is that? I mean to keep you in my heart.
Can you hear her out there?
Can you hear that? Okay. I mean to keep you in my heart, honor you and stand by you, help and share with you the good times and the bad throughout the days and the nights of our lives. That was it.
Okay. Now to you, Now, of course, to you world-weary bozos, that probably sounds like a lot of sentimental twaddle. But that actually is some of the most moving sentiment, some of the most poetic language since the Song of Solomon, and also one of the most ironclad contracts. Do you realize what I was vowing, committing myself to? Well, anyway, I did. I don't mind. You know, I have no regrets. No regrets, okay. But the really cute thing is that Bess made me memorize that. She coached me on that day and night. The first thing before I could go to sleep at night, I had to speak that line, and before I got up in the morning, Okay? Sometimes she'd even call me at work in the middle of the afternoon and make me recite that. Okay? But when we got up to the altar, I said my lines flawlessly, and she forgot hers. So I had to coach her. Yes. All right. Well, then, when that was over, we went and had the reception, you know. And up till this point, if you ignore the bachelor party, things were going along pretty good, you know. They were working out. But at the reception, everything started to fall apart. It was utter chaos, which is not bad for a party. But this was a little too chaotic. Especially since it took you about half an hour to get to the bathroom. We had a very small house, and this thing was just packed solid with people, you know. Now, one other thing, there was a little pond out in our backyard. This is a pond that Bess had built. She dug it with her own bare hands. And it was no big affair. It was just a hole, and she'd covered plastic in it, filled with water and fish, you know. But Bess loved that pond. She used to go out during her lunch hour sometimes and sit out by the pond, you know, and listen to the insects and watch the birds, you know, or the fish swimming in the pool. And she got a real spiritual uplift out of this pond. Now, you remember I have a friend named Steve, and he's been unleashed by his wife. He's running around like a water spaniel because Steve is a water spaniel. This man cannot resist water, any body of water at all. And he had conceived this urge to jump into our pool. I had to talk him out of it. I mean, I really had to set him aside and seriously talk to him, beg him not to jump into that pool, you know. But how can you expect a water spaniel to go against his instincts, right? Thought I'd had him settled down, and I did for a while. But then Bess and I had to leave. You know, we had business, all right? You know, elsewhere. We didn't stay in the house overnight because it was too many people there. We had something else to do. All right. And while we were gone, Steve, I guess he sort of brooded about the pond all night. You know, it was on his mind. He did a lot of other things. But he kept thinking about that pool. And eventually, he just couldn't take it any longer. He snapped. He ran out in the backyard, stripped down to his underwear, and jumped into the pond, into the puddle, okay? Now, in the process, he was drunk, okay, in the process, so he nearly drowned himself. He also ripped the pond out, you know, the plastic, so that all the water drained and the fish died, of course. All right. A couple of my buddies had to drag him out of the pond, and he sort of rolled around on the grass, spewing up this brackish water, you know, kind of like a bilge pump. Yeah. I understand that later on that night, he hadn't settled down yet. Later on that night, he fell out of a two-story, no, it wasn't 2 stories, but he fell out of his hotel window, the motel window, okay, stark naked, and was running around in the courtyard of the motel before Frank and Bob could subdue him and get him back in the room. He'd cut himself because he'd broken a window, okay, and they left blood and a mess all over the motel room floor. Frank got pictures of that. Okay, right, and has never let Steve forget that he has pictures of it either. So you see, there was something for everybody at the wedding. But the next day, we came back, Bess and I, and Frank's wife, Casey, and I think was Linda and perhaps Melanie, were still there cleaning up the mess. They had been nice enough to clean up all the litter. Let's see, we did have some incidents. We lost some antique chairs. That wasn't too bad, you know. And someone had broken screen window in the front. And that wasn't too bad either. But then when they told us about the pool, Bess rushed out into the backyard and to see the damage. And I went out after her, and and she looked at me with this stricken face, and I went over to her and put my arm on her shoulder, and I said, to help with you and share with you the good times and the bad. Huh? So this is marriage. She punched me in the stomach. Okay? Well, that was it. Now, in closing, I'd like to make a statement that, I don't get out to Fanish events very often. Last year's Corflu, I think, was the first time in maybe about 10 years that I'd gone to a convention. And I don't write that much, maybe once or twice a year something shows up in a fanzine. But I do feel a real kinship with everybody here, a real family feeling. And this is kind of like an old family reunion for me, because Cy Chauvin is here, and Leah Zeldis is here, and Patty Peters, Gary Mattingly, and these people, for a while, really were my family when I was a fan in Detroit. So I'm having a great time, and I hope you are too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
And if the next year's winner, whoever it is, doesn't invite you to do something, they're foolish.